Hello, fan of Seuss works or someone who clicked here out of curiosity. This was a manga that caught me off guard on a random night, and the protagonist made me smile genuinely. But, without further ado, let's get to the summary. The story begins with two girls, an elf and a dwarf, asking why the protagonist bought them. Without saying anything, only one reason passed through his mind. To him, it was obvious. Tired of being called a virgin loser, he decided to solve the problem once and for all. But since he couldn't say that, he claimed it was because he wanted to rid the world of hunger. Going back in time to understand this better, when he met the goddess responsible for his reincarnation, she possessed a beauty far beyond that of a human. He quickly realized that he had died somehow and was now in the classic part of reincarnation manga. He could hardly wait to receive his overpowered ability and do this and that with beautiful girls. After 30 years of a lonely life, he was ready to say goodbye to his old self when the goddess greeted him by calling him an idiot, unpopular, and incapable of holding a proper conversation with women, Lord Virgin. He wanted to argue, but he couldn't. Thanks to his sharp-tongued little sister, he had already grown used to it. Compared to his sister, the goddess was being lenient, so he ignored her and simply asked who she was. The beautiful woman then introduced herself as a goddess. To confirm his suspicions, he asked if he was truly dead, and she affirmed it, explaining that a high school girl had fallen from a building onto him, causing his death. He then began to recall that this happened while he was returning from his part-time job, but the perverted goddess interrupted his thoughts, asking if he had enjoyed her softness and delicacy in the process. Outwardly, he said nothing, but inwardly, he didn't deny the fact that he did have a desire to be sat on by a nice backside, though there hadn't been time to feel anything at that moment. Worried about the girl, he asked if she was okay in the end, and the goddess reassured him that he didn't need to worry because she had been saved thanks to him. He now felt somewhat relieved, at least his death hadn't been in vain. Because he had saved a life, the goddess promised him a reward for his good deed and would give him a special opportunity in his next life. Outwardly, he seemed surprised and confused, but inside, he had already expected that. The goddess continued, explaining that he would be reincarnated in a fantasy world of magic and swords, but that he would possess the body of another person, which left him confused. She then pulled up a slide showing who he would possess, a young man named Alan, youthful and handsome. Seeing all these strong points, he felt that with that body, he would surely have no trouble with women. As if reading his thoughts, the goddess commented precisely on that, teasing him. Unable to take her provocations anymore, he thought that if she wanted to play with him, she should do it with another part of him as well. Naturally, the goddess was reading his thoughts and quickly became irritated by his audacity. Changing the subject, he asked if this possession would merge his personality with Alan's and if they would share the same body. The goddess said no. Alan's personality would cease to exist. Since he was a novice adventurer raised in an orphanage, he would soon lose his life in a dungeon. When his soul departed, the protagonist would take over his body, which made him hesitate. That's when he realized, if Alan was going to die in a dungeon, wouldn't that mean he'd be devoured by monsters? This made him even more hesitant, and he protested that he didn't want to possess a zombie's body, especially since he had already been called smelly enough in his past life. However, the goddess explained that this was why she was granting him the privilege of a transmigrator. He would receive the regeneration ability. She further explained that this ability would be pre-programmed to activate the moment his soul possessed Alan's body. He quickly understood, but also realized that he was simply being handed an overpowered ability, easily ranked SSS, for free. With this skill, he was now certain that he would be able to attract many beautiful girls and say goodbye to his sad past. The goddess asked if he was ready, and filled with excitement, he replied yes. His second life was about to begin, and he was sure it would be a wonderful one. This was the moment when he would become the king of the harem. At least, there was a time when he thought that way. 3 years had passed since he started living in this world of swords and magic, and he was on the verge of breaking his own record of loneliness. There were moments when he thought this was all a joke or a nightmare. He had miscalculated many things. First, exterminating monsters was difficult. He couldn't even defeat a slime. Then, the goddess revealed in his dreams that he couldn't learn magic by leveling up. His only advantage was his regeneration ability, which activated quickly and consumed little mana. However, even if he healed himself, the pain didn't go away. No one would want such an incompetent companion, which is why he had been completely alone. On top of all that, he couldn't use his ability in front of others. In this world, the healing ability was considered a miraculous and rare art. The church had an organization that accumulated wealth by providing healing services. His regeneration ability was a superior version of healing, and the last thing he wanted was to draw attention to himself. He now thought that anyone else in his position with the same goals would have given up by now, but he refused to do so. That was why he was here today at the slave merchant. With his 85 IQ, he had come up with the brilliant idea of saving money by working part-time jobs for 3 years. All for this moment. This was where his harem in another world would begin. As soon as he entered, what he saw was a creepy old man who asked what class he desired. The old man was terrifyingly ugly, but he had to keep himself under control and remain firm. He wanted to use a strong and fearless voice, but it came out thin and weak as he requested to see everything. In the end, the old man only showed him a few, but he had come prepared for this and was ready to strike. Striking an extremely stylish pose, he declared that the old man was hiding others, which caught him by surprise. Noting his reaction, he continued his bluff, insisting once more that he had asked to see all of them. The old man remained silent for a moment but eventually agreed to show the rest. They were now in a completely different place, making him wonder if anyone could even live there. Then, they arrived at the location where the last ones were held. There, he found 2 girls in a deplorable state. Seeing them, Alan was completely shocked. There was no hope in their eyes. He asked who they were, and the merchant explained that the taller one was an ancient elf, a superior elf race, and the other was an elderly dwarf. Both were rare species. He stated that they would normally be Class A, but in their current condition. However, before the merchant could continue, he asked how much he wanted for the 2. He wanted to take them both. The merchant didn't understand but agreed. They were of no use to him anymore and had been there for a long time. With that, he bought both of them, carrying them in a cart since they couldn't walk. He made sure they were far enough from the city. After a while, he reassured them, telling them they must have suffered a lot all this time. And then he begins to use his regeneration ability. Now he can finally show the true value of his skill. Whether it's his hands or his eyes, everything was restored as it came into the world. However, he did not expect them to be such beautiful girls, and he is left in shock, unable to understand anything. The girls couldn't believe it either. It could only be a divine miracle. On the other hand, Alan was still confused. He did want beautiful girls in his harem, but he didn't expect them to be this beautiful, so he doesn't even know how to talk to them now. However, the girls quickly ask for his name. Completely unprepared, he tries to introduce himself but ends up biting his tongue in the process. But then, he takes deep breaths and calms down because it is finally happening. His harem in another world begins here. Normally, one would think that he would now start fulfilling his dream of building a harem. That's what one would normally think after all this, right? However, by purchasing these 2 girls, he spent his entire savings down to the last coin, and now he doesn't even have enough money to pay for an inn, forcing him to live in an old hut deep in the mountains. He is completely broke, and the goddess, enjoying the entire situation, invades his monologue just to make fun of him, but somehow, he manages to drive her away. Many things are now out of his plans when all he wanted was to be adored by the 2 girls he bought and be called Master. In the end, he still continues updating his virginity history. The ancient elf is named Sylphie, and the old dwarf is called Noel. Both belong to rare races in this world, but other than that, he knows nothing about them. That's because he can't read or write the script used in this world, preventing him from reading the scroll detailing their information. But realizing this is not the time for self-deprecation, he starts digging his farmland when suddenly Sylphie appears, already dressed in elegant clothes, which completely catches Alan off guard. But he quickly regains his composure and answers her question, saying that this is for cultivating yams, which confuses her for some reason. He asks if, by any chance, she doesn't like yams, but Sylphie says that's not it. Still confused, she asks if he is really going to cultivate them. Alan replies that he is, but not understanding her doubts, he wonders if she doesn't want to eat yams grown by a failure like him. Or maybe she is thinking that her master is poor and wants to be self-sufficient. Trying to change the subject, he asks if she is just taking a walk. At the moment, he has no time to rest because he now has the responsibility of ensuring they don't have to sleep outdoors or go hungry. That's why he needs to spend the money he earns each day on food. And to console his wallet, he convinces himself that it's for the two girls because if they eat a little more meat, they will certainly be great to hug. Placing the basket of fruits on the table, he offers some to Noelle, who thanks him. He just wants them to eat well, but both are still cautious around him. Lying on the floor of his room, he laments his situation because, like this, he can't simply ask for what he truly desires. He needs to make them trust him, but he doesn't have time to think about that now, as he needs to find work for the day, so he tells them he is going to the city and asks them to wait for him. He notices the confusion in their eyes and asks if they want him to buy something specific to eat, but both say no. Lamenting that he doesn't even know what they like to eat and that his plan to attract them with food has failed, he heads to the city. Now, from Sylphie's perspective, we see that she was incredulous about all of this because he simply left them alone. Both she and Noelle had already regained their original powers, and even though they had slave crests, it wouldn't be difficult to escape his control. Perhaps he is testing them? That's what she starts to think. He even wants to cultivate yams, even though Sylphie can grow them instantly with magic. Something he should know by reading the evaluation scroll. He just needed to give her a single order, and he wouldn't have to work alone anymore. She is grateful that he restored their bodies but wonders about his true objective. Despite having the stolen ability to restore and having the two girls at his disposal, she hasn't noticed any sign that he desires their bodies. Little does she know that's exactly what he wants, he just can't bring himself to say it. In the end, she wonders what he plans to do after winning them over, and to confirm her suspicions, she follows him. However, she doesn't see what she expected. Instead, she sees Alan entering a clinic. She wonders if he works there and why he isn't using his restoration ability instead of regular healing. But she quickly realizes that the church would certainly keep an eye on him if he did. However, in the best-case scenario, he could obtain any position and honors he wanted, so she doesn't understand why he works there and earns almost nothing. That's when Alan finishes healing a girl, and she thanks him. He tells her to be more careful while wearing a serene expression that makes Sylphie flustered. She wonders what his problem is, and why he is pretending to be a good person. After all, he buys slaves. But then she remembers that even though he bought them, he seems to have no interest in them. In the end, she has no idea what he is thinking, and at that exact moment, he was only thinking that the clouds looked like a pair of huge melons. 3 months pass, and now, from Alan's perspective, he is harvesting his yams, which are finally ready. Sylphie asks why he hasn't been using her to grow the crops, and I'm sure she can do more than just make plants grow. Alan doesn't understand her question and thinks she wants him to put her to work in agriculture, which isn't necessary since he can restore his stamina and work alone. So he was about to refuse her help when she says that with her tree magic, she can instantly harvest crops, demonstrating it in an instant. He is left speechless, wondering what kind of stolen ability this is and why she had been hiding it all this time. Noticing his confusion, Sylphie asks what's wrong and if he didn't already know about it. That this information should have been written on his evaluation scroll, which reminds him of the paper he couldn't read some time ago. Now, with the yam in his hands, he wonders if he should tell the truth. But he quickly realizes that would be like declaring that he is a baby who can't read or write. Besides being extremely embarrassing for him as their master, a man must appear dignified in front of a woman. That said, he must come up with a lie. But what should he say? That he is a perverted yam lover? He needs to calm down and think of something that won't lower his value even more, but rather, a justification that will elevate his actions in their eyes. And then, he thinks of something. He says that magic is a double-edged sword depending on the user, which is why he decided not to force her to use magic, but rather hoped she would consider using it of her own free will. The idea of thinking one can do anything just because they have a stolen ability is frightening. After this display of hypocrisy, he knows he should be the last person to say such a thing since he has always thought that way. But he continues his charade, saying that there is no need for her to force herself to use magic, and then he returns to his harvest. Now, from Sylphie's perspective, after demonstrating her magic, she thought he might pretend to be a good person but would reveal his true nature after seeing her magic, which did not happen. Instead, what appeared was an expression that showed an open wound in his heart, and his words afterwards seemed to be trying to convince himself. Now she is sure he was not lying and that he possibly lost himself in his restoration power in the past, thinking he could do anything, but something happened that changed his perspective, making him hide his power. Somehow, she reached this conclusion after hearing him speak and now feels ashamed of herself for displaying her magic in such a way. Approaching Noelle, she says she has something to discuss, something about their future. The next morning, when he went to finish his harvest, he was left utterly confused. Besides the yams, there were various vegetables, all ready for harvest. That could only have been Sylphie's doing, and he realizes that even he, a reincarnated individual, has a stolen ability like that. Not only did she do that, but she was also there with a sleepy Noelle, helping with the harvest. Still confused, he asks why she used magic, which makes her wonder if she was too hasty. Suddenly, another great misunderstanding arises, and he thinks she did it to criticize him for what he said the previous day. Now, his plan to use his modern knowledge to be unmatched is ruined. He tries again to say that she doesn't need to force herself, but she says it's fine. As the two leave to prepare breakfast, he sees his time to shine slipping away. Then, he suddenly thinks of another way. If he can no longer succeed in agriculture, then he will invent concrete, which does not yet exist in this world, to create sturdy, modern building. But then, Noelle appears suddenly and says she smelled him doing things, so she asks to participate. He is surprised because this is the first time Noelle has spoken to him like this, so he agrees. She asks what they will do, and he says he wants to build a new house with concrete. Never having heard of such a thing before, she quickly becomes excited, curious about what it is. Alan then begins to explain how concrete and cement are made, while she listens attentively to everything he says. She asks if there is anything else after making the concrete, and excitedly, Alan says he will teach her, but only her. Minutes after explaining the process, he says that in practice, it is more difficult, but Noelle says he can just sit and watch now. In an instant, she begins organizing all the raw materials necessary for the cement, and he then realizes that, this way, he will be left without his contributions, but it was already too late. Noelle, just like Sylphie, also had her stolen ability. While he was panicking, she successfully completed the cement production. Now he remembers how he spoke so proudly that he did not even notice this could happen. He also realizes that recently, the two girls have been talking more and more. Imagining the worst-case scenario, he can only think that they are teaming up and realizing how useless he is. The next day, Noelle and Sylphie built 3 new houses. Noelle, with the ability to harden, made the walls firm, revealing herself as a master in manufacturing. Sylphie filled bamboo with mana, making them super resistant. As Sylphie called him to enter the new houses, he wondered how everything ended up like this. He was supposed to be the reincarnated one with the cheat ability. He was supposed to be the strongest and flirt with the girls. Little did he know that in the future, he would be worshipped as a demon king and feared even by the hero. Watching all of this unfold, the goddess thinks she should tease him more often and see how things turn out. Now, from Noelle's perspective, while she attentively listened to Alan's words, her dwarven instincts were screaming like never before. After reproducing what Alan had taught, she felt even more amazing. Now she is sure that Alan is not just a mere nobody, that even with his stolen restoration ability, he does not show off and is not vain with the knowledge he has to share. Everything he taught her made her extremely happy. Even Sylphie, who was previously so suspicious of him, is now willing to trust him. In this way, Noelle also started to think the same way. Now she also wants to carry Alan's burdens. Thus, when Alan woke up in the morning, there were 2 more houses in the yard, and he did not understand anything. Noelle, eager for Alan's reaction, watched from the corner of her eye until he noticed her, and she then informed him that she had built 3 more houses for each of them. She said this as if it were nothing, which scared him. She then stepped out from where she was hiding and approached him carefully, getting close enough to make him embarrassed. However, without caring about that, she simply began to say that she had worked hard for Alan, for Sylphie, and for herself, so now she wanted him to reward her. And Sylphie, overhearing everything, told him to just do it already. But Alan, with his completely twisted mind, immediately thought that they were plotting something against him, that this was all just a show to ridicule him. However, his depressive fantasies were interrupted as they called him. Sylphie asked if he was okay, and only then did he realize that he needed to calm down, as there was no turning back now. From their perspective, it must be perfectly fine for him to praise Noelle. He has permission to pat her head. Gathering his courage, he now only hopes that she does not see him as a pervert after this. And as he strokes Noelle's head and thanks her for her hard work, his fears turn out to be mere illusions, as Noelle adored it. As he panicked with his heart racing while being purified, Sylphie watched everything, completely embarrassed, unable to stop feeling envious. She had seen that Noelle was blushing when she made her request, so she tried to give her a little push, but she did not expect it to result in this. Trying to calm herself, she convinces herself that she is of one of the most noble species, an ancient elf, and will not feel envy over a simple pat. And so, she decides to increase the number of plant harvests while convincing herself that she certainly has no ulterior motives. Months pass this way, and Sylphie finds Alan once again tending to the vegetables alone, as if forgetting the girl's magic. Together, the two can do anything. Food and construction in general have become much easier, but Alan has never once asked them to use their magic. Rather, they used it of their own accord. After living together for so long, she notices that he really does not seem blinded by desires and lives like a hermit. Though she does notice that he has an obsession with yams, but tired of just having doubts, she now wants to know what he wants to do and his true feeling. Taking advantage of the moment he is alone, she approaches and asks him the reason why he bought them. She wants to know his true goal. And now, from Alan's perspective, the only answer that came to his mind was that he wanted to clap with the two of them, nothing more. But obviously, he can't say that. And just as curious as Sylphie, Noelle also appears, and Sylphie states that the two of them belong to rare species. Now that they've recovered, their value is immeasurable, yet he still only uses them to compensate for the needs around him. They ask if there's really nothing he wants to do. With these questions, it almost seems like they know what he truly desires. And after hearing that part about just to compensate, he doesn't understand at all. Abundant food and a richly furnished home are not just anything. They're already providing him food for free. How could he ask for more? And why doesn't he ask them to use magic? Because that would simply make him feel even more pathetic. The two of them have already given him food and a house, so he simply can't bring himself to take advantage of their abilities. In his current situation, if they asked him to lick their feet, he would have no choice but to obey. But thinking about it more, he would actually love it if they told him to do that. As he racks his brain for a way to escape this, the girls, wanting to show what they're capable of, reveal their most broken magic abilities to him. However, this only shatters him even more. Now, enraged, he decides to reveal his true intentions to them. He's going to tell them what he really wants to do. Or at least that was his intention, because in the end, he blurts out that he wants to save the world from hunger. Hearing this catches both girls off guard, but before he can even process their reactions, his true self punches him for running away once again out of cowardice. Sylphie, still absorbing what was just said, thinks that this is an ideal worthy of a god, something one wouldn't normally admit so easily. Not to mention, he's gripping a yam way too tightly with a distant expression. Little does she know that he's currently waging an inner war against himself. After glancing at Noelle to confirm that they were thinking the same thing, Sylphie steps forward, still not completely trusting him, but tells him that she will follow him, because she wants to see, by his side, the world he wants to create. And with that, the excuse he made up on the spot became the beginning of his heroic tale in another world. In the world, there are only two kinds of people: losers and winners. Those who lead and those who follow. Those who exploit and those who are exploited. Thinking about that makes Alan remember his little sister, Mizuki, and their games. Like when she made completely unfair trades, giving him something he didn't like, and taking from him something he did, never giving him any chance to choose. That day, Alan didn't forgive her for her unfair tricks and tried to get revenge by tickling her, but he always failed to get back at his sister Mizuki. He wonders if she's doing well now, but after all, he thinks reincarnating wasn't that lamentable. However, this time of memories happens while he's in the middle of a conversation with the girls, who call him back to reality. That's when he realizes his mind went back to the past just to escape reality. Because that conversation was a direct continuation of when he said he wanted to rid the world of hunger. Asking if he was listening, Sylphie says that they should then cultivate the land to rid the world of hunger. And Alan can only agree at that moment, while the goddess watches everything from her special seat. While Sylphie analyzes how they should proceed, Alan begins to wonder how the hell Sylphie, with all that intellectual beauty, hasn't noticed his secondary motive. He even starts thinking that, in fact, she has noticed, and is just pretending ignorance so that he keeps dancing in the palm of her hand. Perhaps this is the announcement of the end of his harem life in another world? No. He can't let it end like that. He still has a bunch of modern knowledge up his sleeve, and he was even considered the highest IQ person at school. That said, he then proposes that they should make fertilizers. Something they have no idea about. So he quickly explains that it's a substance that supplements the soil nutrients used for plant growth. Even though Sylphie can make plants grow in barren soil, land that shouldn't be able to produce anything, that's not something sustainable for long. Sylphie understands very well, since that way she could use less mana, and they can start thinking about improving flavor. Alan then comments that there's something more to it, called crop rotation. The plan is to feed the cattle on the fallow land. And fallow, in simple terms, is a practice of letting the soil rest from agricultural activity, as a way to restore the land's vitality and prevent productivity loss. On this land, they will sow wheat, and by creating pastures for the cattle, they'll increase their numbers. The cattle eating grass will produce manure for the soil, truly an agricultural revolution. The protagonist really farmed IQ here. Feeling quite full of himself while talking, he notices that she's completely speechless. Which is to be expected. There shouldn't be a woman in the world who likes a vain and arrogant man like him. Until Noel suddenly approaches him with curious eyes, wanting to know more about that. Alan knows this flow of events very well. Like this, his moment to shine will be stolen again. Knowing that, he tries to be firm this time and says that he thinks it's better if he does it himself. What he didn't expect was for Sylphie to join in. And while asking him not to throw a tantrum, she puts her little finger on his nose and says that's not nice. That leaves him completely flustered, making him wonder if she sees him as a spoiled child now. And what's with that wink she gave? While he's wondering those things, Noel also grabs his arm and asks for details on how to make the fertilizer already. Feeling completely blessed that these two beauties are so interested in his knowledge, Alan gives in to their requests and explains everything properly. After hearing it all, Noel becomes completely fascinated. And after that, she immediately gets to work. Lunchtime arrives, and Noel finally shows up, since she had been gone for a while. Sylphie says she was just about to call her, but Noel says that before that, she wants to show them something. Noel has already made several shovels and hoes, as well as multiple bags of fertilizer. She says that, judging by Alan's explanation, the amount used can vary, so she wants them to test it and tell her if any adjustments are needed. Seeing that achievement, Alan can only admire Noel. Until Noel says that, with this, Alan's job will become easier. And only then does he ask himself where he fits in all this. Noel is responsible for production, while Sylphie is responsible for cultivation. That way, the only thing left for him is to be in charge of complaints and record keeping. Even though he understands that this is a necessary and important function, it shouldn't be the role of someone reincarnated in another world with an overpowered support skill. To him, they once again stole his spotlight and still threw chores at him. And as if that weren't enough, they even ask for praise. While patting Noelle's head, feeling completely exploited, he realizes at least her hair is soft and fluffy to the touch. Now, from Sylphie's perspective, as she watches Alan pet Noelle's head, Sylphie tries to tell herself that she shouldn't feel jealous. That Alan is just showing appreciation to Noelle. But interrupting them, she says they should leave the cultivation work for later and have lunch first. They do so, but while eating, Sylphie can't stop thinking that Alan really is a curious person. His wish to rid the world of hunger is something to admire. But even with all his strength, she doesn't feel it's truly possible. However, after hearing Alan talk about fertilizers and crop rotation, she was left speechless. As he himself said, it's a revolutionary idea. And what impresses her most is the vast amount of knowledge needed to reach that point. To her, Alan fought alone for a long time and kept going frantically to turn his ideal into reality. Now she's even sure that the reason he bought her is because only an ancient elf can freely control tree magic. But even if she thinks that's the case, he still doesn't force her to work or use master commands. And she says that respecting their independence that way really makes him an interesting person. Alan asks if she said something, but Sylphie says it's nothing, and asks if they'd like more soup, and both accept. After that, it's time to get back to work. Now, from Alan's perspective, thanks to the homemade by Noelle, the job wasn't so hard. Even if many things didn't go as he wanted, Alan still hopes there must be a way to end up on the harem route, where he can get everything he wants with his cheat ability. His regeneration is an enormously powerful cheat that can even resurrect. Not only that, he can also use it to dig fertile soil. And while he keeps trying to motivate himself, saying positive things about himself, Alan wonders if Sylphie and Noelle will notice his effort and praise him for a job well done. He loves giving them gentle pats, but he also wants to be pleased and appreciated, and so he continues until nightfall. Now, from Noelle's perspective, who watched Alan enthusiastically working to eliminate hunger. To her, the reason he bought her was because she's an ancient dwarf. Yet, him trusting them with so much wisdom without reserve, even though it would be easy to use them for selfish reasons. Does he think they wouldn't betray him? Noelle had sometimes wondered about that. But now she realizes that's not it, and that, after all, Alan has never, not once, given them an order. What Alan wants from them is to walk together toward the distant future, when his ideal is achieved. And the knowledge he shares with them is the result of his efforts, and a proof of his trust in them. Besides, he's a responsible person who's always attentive to their needs. And because of that, in that moment, Noelle swears upon the name of the ancient dwarves that she will support him. She's sure Sylphie feels the same. But before she can say anything, Sylphie tells Noelle that Alan is simply amazing. Noelle naturally agrees, saying she has to give her all to support him. Upon hearing that, Sylphie agrees and says she will do the same. And so, they decide to act more on their own will, doing everything possible to make their ideals, and his, a reality. Without knowing it, Alan was walking straight toward the long-awaited harem route. Now, back to Alan's perspective, resting after a whole day of work, the goddess appears, completely breaking the fourth wall of his world, just to call him pathetic and lazy for getting tired after such useless chores. And Alan, already used to her regular visits, can only ask her to stop coming just to have fun at his expense. Trying not to let it slide this time, Alan asks if, by any chance, the other goddesses are as bitter as her, but she just laughs foolishly, saying maybe that's the case. Unable to take her teasing any longer, Alan drives her away. But in the end, he agrees with her, since he really is free and idle. After all, Sylphie's magic has its own balance, and it's not efficient to plow too much at once. Noelle is working in her workshop, and household chores aren't necessary, since their magic easily handles that. Then Alan realizes that if he has nothing to do, he just needs to invent something. So he rushes to Noelle and says he has a favor to ask, but if she's busy. Yet before he even finishes talking, Noelle cheerfully agrees to listen. He shows her his idea, and Noelle comes closer to get a better look. While analyzing it closely, practically using him as support, Alan wonders if she hasn't noticed it because she's too immersed in the project, while he himself is in shock. Moments later, she says there are no measurements listed in the design, and Alan admits he forgot. But the truth is that, since he still can't read or write, It ended up as nothing more than a simple illustration. After that, Noel says it's easy to make, but asks what he'll use it for. And with no real answer, Alan says it's something he needs. However, the truth is that he wants to create these games so they can all enjoy them together. And maybe, through a punishment game, he can achieve the kind of development he's been dreaming of. Thus, Noel rushes off to build those games. The question left for you, the viewer, is, will Alan become the one who exploits others? Or will he remain the one being exploited? Now, from Sylphie's perspective, having noticed Alan and Noel excitedly working in the workshop, the two were already talking about the games and their rules. Noel asks what they're for, and Alan says they're for leisure, which confuses Sylphie. Because why would Alan, the man whose goal is to rid the world of hunger, waste time with games? She needed to ask him for details, so she approached and asked if she could join them. Seeing her, Alan smiles, a smile that, to Sylphie, says a lot. Surely there must be some hidden meaning behind what they're doing. She knows that Alan might have the appearance of a love-struck young man, but the impression he usually gives is completely false. The true Alan, having obtained great power, is a wise man who's suffered for years and is now at peace. Little does she know he's actually just an ordinary young man dying to build a harem. But knowing none of this, Sylphie wants to become Alan's strength and support him however she can. Joining them, Noel asks how the games work, and more excited than ever, Alan says they'll start with a game called Reversi. In this game, the pieces are divided into black and white. However, as the goddess herself said, for those who want details, look it up on Google. And so Alan explains all the games they created, and after hearing everything, Sylphie is simply shocked by such vast knowledge. All those games he presented had rules that anyone could understand, and she could easily see a future where both children and adults would be drawn to them. Literally a gold mine. Then suddenly Alan tells them that instead of playing for fun, why not make a bet? The winner can give the loser any order they want. Unaware of Alan's plan, Sylphie is completely perplexed. Giving slaves the chance to order their master around is utterly absurd. So Sylphie starts overthinking. Could this be a test directly connected to his goal of ending hunger? Should she refuse to show understanding or accept? She doesn't know. Then Noel calls her and says the two of them need to do their best. That brings Sylphie back to herself, reminding her of the promise they made to each other, and so they agree to join Alan's game. Excited, the girls tell themselves they'll do everything they can to meet his expectations. With negotiations over, the game begins with Alan fully convinced of his own skill. With the table ready, Sylphie realizes that since Alan is the game's inventor, he must know everything. By that logic, she doesn't see how they could possibly win against him. However, after a few moves, Alan shocks Sylphie. His last move was the dumbest she could imagine. And not just once, but repeatedly. And now he's in a completely disadvantageous position. With that, Alan loses to Sylphie and can only cry, while the goddess laughs harder than ever, and Sylphie remains utterly confused. Thinking about how the hell he lost, she wonders if it was intentional and part of his plan. That Alan never intended to win. That these matches were just a pretext for them to give him orders. These games are a gold mine, and their financial situation doesn't allow for simple playtime. So the only possible command to give must be. And now, after their crushing victories over their master, the two make their requests. Sylphie wants to register with the Merchant Guild, and Noel wants the property rights for those recreational games. Alan stays silent for a while, and Sylphie wonders if that was the right answer. Little did they know that Alan was silent all that time because he thought they'd ask him to set them free. After taking a deep breath, he agrees to their requests. In the end, his plan completely fell apart. A veteran defeated by newcomers, his wicked plan ruined. Now, in the city to fulfill their requests, Alan wonders if the reason they continue with him is because they actually don't hate him. Little did he know they're already in his harem. He just lacks initiative. Overjoyed, Alan also decides to buy a few things, and Sylphie notices how he seems to be having fun. Watching him talk with Noel, she now wonders if that means she's gotten a little closer to him. That Sylphie is just too cute, there's no denying it. 2 weeks have passed since Noel and Sylphie registered with their guilds, and Alan is now obsessed with shogi, one of the games he created in this world. He's been playing it a lot with Sylphie lately, And when he invites her for another match today, Sylphie accepts, saying it'll be great mental training. Those simple words already destroy him. He can easily imagine her calling him weak. But no matter what he thinks, the result is always the same. Sylphie wins effortlessly, and Alan makes excuses, saying he wasn't serious. After that, Noel shows up and calls Sylphie to head out. Before leaving, Noel says they're going to the capital again today and will be back before dinner. Thus, Alan spends yet another day alone doing nothing. Lying down frustrated, he starts thinking of another plan based on his modern knowledge, one that will lead him directly to the romance route. His plan now is simple, to create alcohol. With a burning body comes a loosened reason. After that, they just have to go with the flow, and then it'll happen. However, ending his fantasies, the goddess appears again and asks if he's alone once more. He says the two went to the capital, as she must already know, and the goddess replies that they've been doing that a lot lately. That's enough to make Alan open his eyes and realize he also hasn't seen them shopping. So why are they doing that? They don't even have money to spend anyway. Delivering a complete checkmate inside Alan's head, the goddess says that maybe they're simply abandoning their unreliable master, for whom they've lost affection, and went to work far from home? Reflecting on it only now, Alan realizes that might actually be true, because even though they've managed to cut food costs, he still can't give them a life of comfort. Noel and Sylphie are real adults, so of course they'd want to eat delicious food and have fun with beautiful clothes. And while they might be working who knows where, he's there, like an old man making games only he wants to play. With that, after renting a triplex inside Alan's head, the goddess leaves as if her job is done, leaving Alan paranoid with his overactive imagination, making him wonder if they might be doing something illegal out there. That thought alone is enough for Alan to go running frantically to the capital, refusing to believe they could be doing such things. He runs through the city without looking at anything, thinking only that he's failed them and now must work hard. Upon finding Sylphie and Noel, still out of breath and desperate, Alan says they can ask him for anything they want, while praying in his head for them to stay with him. Suddenly, Sylphie bursts into tears, and Alan doesn't understand a thing while trying to catch his breath after that long run. He wonders if their lives were so hard that they had to hold back tears, and tells them to wait, that he'll withdraw money from his account. The problem is, he barely has anything in his account. At least that's how it was, because now Alan has 3 million in his account, leaving him paralyzed upon realizing it. Sylphie then explains that she's been diligently depositing the usage fees from the recreational games into his account. Finally looking around the city, whether in the guild or the streets filled with children, elders, merchants, and adventurers, everyone was playing one of his games. Sylphie explains that, in order to obtain the rights over the items, they had been negotiating with the Merchants Guild, and then made a contract with them and a holy spirit. With that, when the games become more and more popular, the guild will raise its rank and always deposit an amount into his bank account. Sylphie's explanation went in one ear and out the other, since what he really wanted to know was why Sylphie's eyes were still full of tears. Still confused, he says that they should then go shopping first, anything they want. And when they look at each other, both agree and seem to think of the same thing. Thus, Sylphie thanks him, and then they go to the first place, the second, and so on. When Alan realized it, they had already bought more than 50 girls. Ellie, Tina, Ray, and the one who stands out the most among them, Aura. All of them of abnormal beauty. And the harem he had always dreamed of was now in front of him. Sylphie and Noel then say that now he is the chief of Alan Village, and expect a lot from him, while he wonders what the hell they are planning. Now, Alan has the responsibility of providing for more than 50 beautiful girls. Back home, lying down, Alan now wonders how it came to this. In just one day, he ended up with more than 50 girls to take care of. Did he make some mistake? When he asks himself that, he quickly realizes that it's not his fault at all, but rather Sylphie and Noel who are responsible for it. Going back a few hours earlier, at the slave market, to the moment when Sylphie was carefully choosing each of them, the seller tries to act smart with her, but Sylphie, being more intelligent than him, immediately points out that they were injured, so the price should be reduced by at least 2 digits. Watching this show of negotiation, Alan notices that Sylphie even made sure to use terms that didn't show weakness or compassion, precisely to remain equal, unlike Alan, who was completely emotional, and realizing this even makes him a bit mad at himself. The point is that Sylphie is negotiating with this veteran, but she's so far ahead that it's like taking candy from a baby. Suddenly, one of the girls she managed to get trips, but Sylphie elegantly catches her before she hits the ground. The little girl, embarrassed, apologizes, but Sylphie calms her down and tells her she doesn't need to rush. The protagonist, still watching, is amazed, because she did something he could hardly manage, but that he really wanted to do. With that, Alan realizes that Sylphie is not only beautiful, intelligent, stylish, and smells really good, she also has a broken agriculture skill and is a great negotiator. Thinking about that, he now wonders if maybe she's actually the protagonist? He can barely keep up with her. He's the one reincarnated here, so he should be the one more respected. However, at that moment, the girls were completely focused on shopping. Noelle thinks long-term and chooses even those who haven't awakened their talents yet. And while they discuss the best thing to do, Alan is still listening in the background like a mere NPC, and notices that Noelle talks as if she has some kind of broken analysis skill, something he didn't even know about. That only keeps making his presence fade further. And going back to the present, Alan finds himself completely lost, because things are moving way too fast. So he decides to call the girls to talk about future strategies so he won't be left out like this anymore. Now, from Sylphie's perspective, she was more nervous than ever, but she's sure there shouldn't be any misunderstanding. After all, Alan appreciates her efforts. However, remembering that moment when he said he would buy anything for them, Sylphie remembers well that she couldn't hold back her tears, but wonders if he noticed them. Regardless, to her, he can ask whatever he wants. Sylphie also confesses that she's always been very worried about whether or not she disappointed him, because after receiving all those recreation items, she thought she should be earning a lot from them, and that if Alan went all out, she's sure he could end up with profits of more than 2 digits in the end. She also remembers that Alan didn't try to interfere. Instead, he called her to play every day and always let her win, only to complain later that he didn't play seriously. That there's no way the creator of all that could really be that weak. He must have lost on purpose just to prepare her to deal with merchants. With that, we can see that she's completely in love, however, with a completely idealized version of Alan. Poor guy. But trying to regain her composure before reaching his room, she tells herself she's going to keep that side of him a secret. Still, that slaves like them, in most cases, are being exploited and worked until they can't anymore. However, Alan didn't treat them that way, but instead welcomed them kindly. That there must not be anyone who wouldn't want to be in his warm and gentle hands. The protagonist has no idea what he's missing by not making a move soon. But already standing before Alan's door, Sylphie tells herself she's sure that she and Noelle made great choices buying the people necessary to achieve their goal. So, she repeats to herself that she should be proud. With that, she asks if she may come in, and Alan receives them and asks them not to be nervous and to sit wherever they want. However, both refuse the offer to sit and remain standing. And going back to Alan's perspective, he doesn't understand the reason for the refusal. But maybe it's because they don't want to stay too long in a man's room, or maybe it smells bad. Either way, he tells them to relax and that they should start by talking about the recreation items. That they did great with what they did. While thinking to himself that even if they've stolen his achievements, he should at least praise them. And with that, in a not-so-natural way, Alan says that he's proud of them as their master. He does it to show recognition for their accomplishments before they might end up rebelling and asking to leave. And for that, he can even put his attempt to leave the Virgin Club in second place, since there are still other ideas for the future. However, the girls say there's no need to praise them. That, in fact, they didn't do anything to deserve praise. Hearing that, he wonders if they're joking. Even after making 3 million? Their expressions still show they're expecting something. A look he doesn't really like, but that doesn't matter now. And then he says he's going to tell them his future plans. And the goddess, seeing that he was getting more nervous, intervenes and says that it must be because his room smells, and he can only ask her to stop reading his mind. Alan then says his plans. First, they will recover the money spent, and when they pay their debts, he will remove their slave crests. Therefore, they must work hard in agriculture and commerce, and everyone will work. Everyone will receive salaries, and that way each girl won't have to suffer paying off this debt. After that, he asks what they think of this idea. To him, there's nothing to complain about since the girls will receive their freedom, while Sylphie and Noelle will collect the money. Just thinking about the responsibility of providing for 50 girls already gives him a headache. But his idea doesn't please Sylphie and Noelle at all, who don't understand this idea of wanting to let the other girls go after using his overpowered healing ability. That he should also see their future value after they blossom, which would be much greater than what was spent on them now. Being attacked with rejection arguments, Alan could only ask them to calm down, while they continued and asked about his objective. And his goal is very simple. He just wants to smash the two of them, but he cannot simply say that. And since he cannot say that, he says that he only doesn't want to take advantage of the other girls for being slaves. What he wants are comrades who walk by his side of their own free will, instead of those who cannot disobey orders. But if there were girls who wanted to stay after paying off their debts, he wouldn't mind. With that, he then explains his complete plan. His idea is, Noelle and the other dwarves will build tools and fertilizers. Meanwhile, the elves, loved by nature, will increase the productivity of yam, wheat, and soybean cultivation. With these three pillars he mentioned, they will begin to develop new products and obtain funds using the Merchant's Guild. Upon hearing all this, the girls are left speechless, and he wonders if what he said worked, while noticing that Sylphie sighed. After sighing, she says that she thought she couldn't be surprised by anything anymore, but she was wrong again. Having said that, she then says that she will also allow herself to act as she wishes, and agreeing with her, Noelle and Sylphie leave. And for the beta, Alan, nothing remains. Now, from Sylphie's perspective, she was completely embarrassed for having acted so foolishly. She not only didn't know what Alan truly sought, but also couldn't give him an answer. She couldn't maintain a posture worthy of her master. At that moment, she can only ask herself if she disappointed him. Noelle goes to her to ask if she is okay, and only then does she calm down. Now calmer, Sylphie realizes that Alan's idea even makes sense, considering his presented personality. It would be obvious that he wouldn't want slaves. Noelle agrees with the logic but says that the fact is he saved all those girls using his stolen ability. Girls whom Noelle and Sylphie specifically chose based on their past selves. He saved them willingly and acted kindly toward all of them. But Sylphie, still unconvinced, says that even so, he should be more greedy, and Noelle agrees with her, saying that the girls they bought are still all confused. Reflecting that she will have to explain everything to the girls later, Sylphie also hopes that all of them understand Alan's kindness and intelligence, but that she will also keep an eye on him to make sure he doesn't seduce them. And having been lost in these thoughts for a long time, Noelle calls for Sylphie, and then she goes to the girls to explain everything. Arriving there, Sylphie says that, as compensation for their work, everyone will receive a salary, and asks if they have any questions. The girls, seeing that these conditions were even too good for them, ask if this is correct, and that they don't want to cause problems for their master. With that, Sylphie realizes that Alan's kindness reached them through his way of acting and his power. Proud of her master, Sylphie responds that this is how Alan is, so they should get used to it quickly. The girls remain confused, and then another hand goes up to ask a question. Before proceeding, the girl asks if she can address Sylphie more informally, and she agrees. The girl who raised her hand is named Aura, and she wants to know if, then, they won't need to offer extra services, if you know what she means. Sylphie responds no, and reflects slightly that Aura is also a high elf, like herself, and not only that, but also the same age. After answering Aura's question, the girls become even more confused, and Sylphie thinks she understands it, since her race is admired as a symbol of beauty, and it wouldn't be true not to say they are proud of that. It doesn't mean they would want to give their bodies to an unknown man, but even being the object of attention won't make them doubt their attractiveness, and this situation is embarrassing for them. They are a big contradiction, and Sylphie recognizes that. Still confused, Aura then asks if Alan perhaps doesn't like women, and Sylphie responds that this doesn't seem to be the case. This makes her quickly remember the time she caught Alan staring at parts of her. and she admits that she even ends up making movements trying to seduce him on purpose. Little does Alan know what he's missing. Sylphie deliberately giving him all the signs, but quickly changing the subject. Sylphie says that, although things may seem too unbelievable, Alan would never hurt anyone without reason. She swears by her holy sacred tree and asks for everyone's cooperation. Noticing Sylphie's determination, they begin to calm down and ask if Aura agrees with this as well, and Aura responds yes, and that Alan sparked her interest. This is Aura, and this morning she was more radiant than ever in her new clothes. Looking at herself in the mirror, she does not stop admiring herself even for a moment, and comments that these clothes turned out perfect on her. For everyone, including herself, she is a completely narcissistic person. She loves herself very much. But there is a reason for that. After being captured and placed in a cell, fearing the worst scenario, she herself used magic on her own body to damage her skin. Because if her destiny was to be sold to an unknown man to perform those unpleasant services, she preferred to become nothing more than the worthless trash of a merchant that would never be sold. Drowning in despair and losing both her beauty and her magic, simply waiting for her end. However, she was still clinging to something, to a fragment of dignity, and perhaps because of that, before her appeared the one who would become her master, Alan, and his ancient elf, Sylphie. Both were even now cultivating with their own efforts, even though they possessed so many people who could do that for them. He is somewhat possessive regarding his tasks, and because of that she finds him quite strange, and cannot understand him. However, Sylphie has already told her he is not just any person, but the one who understood the great power of restoration. Precisely because of that he plays the role of a fool, and she is certain that Aura and the others will understand him soon. And remembering his great idea of freeing them after they had worked enough, she asks herself again whether he is not simply stupid after all. Thanks to Alan's power of restoration, their powers returned completely, and consequently their market value also skyrocketed. And he should know that by reading their information on the scroll. And what he did was not merely a promise of words, but a contract with sacred spirits. Aura simply cannot understand him at all. But regardless of that, it was Alan who cured the heart condition that she despised so much. Because of all this, she would by no means refuse to give her body and soul to him. On the contrary, this only makes her extremely excited about it. As a race, they are full of pride and vanity. The women refuse everyone and classify the majority of men as nobody. When they take interest in someone, and that person does not show reciprocity to their feelings, only then is passion born in their hearts. She wonders if perhaps Alan has interest in Sylphie, but quickly discards that thought, because she remembers that Sylphie has already said that Alan is constantly looking at her from head to toe. Seeing that completely love-struck expression on Sylphie's face made her even more excited. And if Alan's plan is to make an elf like her fall, he certainly must be very skilled, a veteran experienced in the battle of love. And because of that, she intends to challenge him to a battle, beginning with a light greeting in the morning. And as she walks toward him, we are soon shown how Alan appears to Aura. Something like a simple, cute, and foolish puppy. And watching that whole scene, she could not hold herself back and ended up quietly saying that he was cute. However, he seems to have heard it, because upon noticing her, he quickly walks toward Aura. She does not understand anything and wonders why he is staring at her so intensely. Did he get angry? Did he even notice her new clothes? And quickly remembering Sylphie's comments about Alan looking at certain parts of her body, Aura realizes something strange. Alan is staring at her, but only looking fixedly into her eyes. It is worth mentioning that her clothes make it quite suggestive where she wanted him to look. And while she was in shock at the possibility that Alan had not looked anywhere else, he suddenly calls Aura to play a game. Now, from Alan's perspective when he went to get the game, he was confident in his abilities after playing so much with Sylphie. And even though he became the chief of the village without even knowing it, he still possesses pride. But when he heard Aura calling him cute, she threw oil on the fire. Because of that, he ended up inviting her to play without thinking. But if things end well, he will use this opportunity to ask to touch her large attributes. And trying to calm himself, he tries to remind himself that he is still the leader of this village, and it is as if they were a corporation, which makes him a CEO, so any mistake. Yes, he cannot even deceive himself because he immediately imagines the girls calling him strange and perverted because of his possible actions. But in any case, he now needs to act with prudence, and he will try not to look anywhere inappropriate. However, he can still place a punishment for the loser, and so he does. Whoever wins will be able to give an order to the loser, and his desire with that is very obvious. If he wins, he will ask to analyze her attributes without restrictions, which he was not able to analyze before. And if he gets lucky, perhaps he might even obtain something more? He admits that yes, Sylphie does have perfect attributes overall. However, there is a great difference between them. In addition, Aura possesses a charm similar to that of an idol, but at the same time she has a proud behavior like a noble. Simply an incredible combo. But pulling him out of his fantasies, Aura calls his name, and then they begin the first game. From the very first move, Alan reinforces to himself that after training so much with Sylphie and the others, he has become stronger. This match is his. However, reality soon proved otherwise, because Aura won the first game, in the second game he was humiliated, in the third game as well, and in the fourth he had already given up before it even began. His gamer spirit was already destroyed, but he still said that he was not taking it seriously. And since Sylphie was close to them, Alan, completely humiliated, calls for her and says that Aura was bullying him, not letting him win even a single match. And without having destroyed him enough in the games, Aura calls him cute once again, which makes him run away. Now, back to Aura's point of view. She remembers that he had said he would play seriously, however he played in a completely confused way, and ended up looking like a lost little animal. And in a completely convinced manner, she found all of that hilarious, and wondered what she should ask him to do, since she was the one who won. However, her name is suddenly called by Sylphie, who congratulates her, but for having completely failed. Aura does not understand anything and wonders what she meant by that. And thinking again about everything that happened, she soon realizes that their battle was strangely one-sided. At one moment she was winning, at another moment Alan was losing. This made her lower her guard completely, and at that instant she had already lost. Could all of that have been a setup for Alan to play around while pretending to be controlled? Aura simply cannot discard that option. That would mean she had been dancing in the palm of his hand the whole time. Thinking about that makes her quickly recognize him as a truly diabolical person. Noticing this, Sylphie agrees with the idea of him being diabolical, and says that if she gets too close while burning with feelings like that, it will not end with her simply being burned. And while leaving the place, she says that since they are of the same race, she understands her feelings, but that Aura must have already noticed as well. The one who falls in love first will always lose. And she leaves her alone with those words. In this way, she recognizes Alan as an aberration, and recognizes Sylphie as a brilliant woman, someone whose place surely no one else could occupy. Even so, she will not give up, and she will learn from Sylphie's advice, because the harder the objective, the more excited she becomes. And not having been humiliated enough by Aura, the goddess responsible for his reincarnation appears only to ridicule him. She reveals that there is a ranking among the gods, where he is in the top number, one of the people no one would want to reincarnate as, and wonders if she should reveal more things. Changing her mind, the goddess says that rumors about him playing with Aura have spread, and says that he must have plans on how to deal with that. His idea is to use his authority to allow the other girls to also play the games he created and reduce the workload. That way, if the village collapses, at least he will no longer be the only one who only eats, sleeps, and plays. But the goddess notices his intentions and says that he is only trying to dodge responsibility, but admits that he is good at getting away with things. However, allowing all the other girls to also play created a method of torture for him. Sylphie and Noelle suggested that all of them should play against him, with the excuse of getting to know each other better. The result? He only gained more and more defeats to collect. Destroyed and lying on the bed, he now wonders if he did something to make Sylphie angry for her to suggest that everyone should play against him. But the fact is that he indeed became closer to all of them. They constantly called him to play, but with time it stopped being only about playing. They simply wanted to spend time with him talking about something, and not only did he become closer to all of them, but they themselves became closer to one another as well. And thanks to his self-deprecating mind, he soon imagines that the reason for that is because they have a common topic, talking about how much of a loser he is. But considering all of this, we can say that Sylphie's plan worked very well. They have been living like a community. Even so, it is not as if they had no dissatisfaction at all. At that moment they were about to invoke their innate magics, and after all of them concentrated enough, they all used their great magical gifts and activated their magics together, making all the crops grow. And the Beta Alan, watching that entire eye-shining show, could not help but feel bad, because even the few things he could do before are now easily done by them. He even tries to be useful by saying that he could take care of the harvest, but with silly and proud smiles, they say to leave it to them, that they will take care of everything. And while that sight would be wonderful for any of us, Alan, who only wanted to be useful at something, watched a show of magic everywhere. To him, they were not just trying to please him, but rather saying that they do not need him, yet he could not stop himself from saying that they are amazing. Hearing this makes them even more excited, and so they continue. Later, now in his room, Alan was furious, because he thought that they used their beauty and cute smiles so that he would not be able to oppose them. And the goddess, as always, says that he really does seem that easy. However, he will not let it end like this, because he still has a plan up his sleeve and now intends to show the real power of a reincarnated person. Later, now in the kitchen, Alan calls Sylphie, Noelle, and Aura, and confused by this sudden call, Sylphie asks if he was perhaps hungry, and says that she would ask one of the girls to make something. However, he says that this is not the case, and that he actually wants to test a new recipe. And with a look that would accept no answer other than yes, Alan asks if they would help him make this new recipe. His plan this time is to make them so fascinated with his food that they will no longer be able to live without him. Now, after instructing Sylphie to cut some yams and Aura to take care of preparing the soy, Alan makes the first of the ingredients for his recipe, soybean oil. The three girls taste it and could barely believe the flavor. Seeing such excitement from them over something that is only the beginning makes him even more excited to continue with his plan. When suddenly Aura asks what kind of magic Alan used to prepare something like this, but Sylphie quickly warns that he actually cannot use magic. And Noelle completes by saying that he works hard on things that hit him right in the heart, but Aura quickly realizes that she may have been insensitive and apologizes. But moving forward with his plan, Alan asks Noelle to continue with her part. Dwarves possess a characteristic called metal, which allows them to have great aptitude in manipulating all metals, which combines perfectly with their great compatibility with the earth. Thanks to all of this, Noelle has the ability to create fire. However, the only one who could stay close to that fire of such pressure would be herself. So she is responsible for taking care of the frying, which makes Alan once again only able to watch while feeling useless. However, he does not have time to become depressed now. Soon after Noelle takes care of the frying, now comes the finishing touch, in which Alan adds a pinch of salt. And like a true chef, he presents to the girls French fries, but made with yams. And yes, this is a real recipe, and the girls, who had never heard that name before, naturally did not understand what that was. However, as soon as they taste it, they are amazed. How could yams fried in oil be so good? And Alan, just by looking at Aura's expression, was already satisfied. Sylphie also loved it, but her entrepreneurial mind was already thinking about how much that would sell. Alan was able to understand well what the two of them were feeling, but when it came to Noelle, he simply had no idea what was going on in her head. But not stopping with only that, now it was time for the final dish, the time to make bread. Hearing that again leaves the three girls confused, but not because bread does not exist in that world, but because it is a very unpleasant food at that time. This soon makes Alan remember that they do not use any fermentation in the preparation of bread, which is why it comes out with a horrible taste. And then he says that he will teach them something about the preparation of bread. He takes some grape skins, places them in a jar, and adds water and sugar. He shakes it back and forth, and now adds a trick that he has been keeping until now, his spoiling magic, which is only possible because of his restoration. What he did was basically extract the yeast from that. And what is yeast? Well, it does not matter, because the girls were all surprised that Alan supposedly used magic when everyone thought he was not capable. And knowing exactly what question all of them wanted to ask, he quickly makes it clear that he really cannot use magic. What he did was use his innate ability. But then Sylphie asks why he called it dark magic. He explains that he basically used his restoration on his brain, and that made him recover a magic that he had already seen before. And going back to the first days when he arrived in that world, one day he woke up with the goddess who reincarnated him sitting on top of him, wishing him good morning, and saying that she would explain his ability better. He wakes up startled and asks if she perhaps knows what time it is to be doing that. But as always, she does not care. He then goes straight to the point and asks what she wanted. And before even beginning, she apologizes, and then begins to explain that his privileged skill as a transmigrator is top tier. However, due to his total loser aspects, his ability has limited use. As an example, she compares him to a computer with high-quality parts but with low RAM, which makes it impossible to use its full capacity. And calling him 8 megabytes, she provokes him as always, but soon returns to explaining his ability. His ability, Restoration, is polysemous, which makes it capable of being applied to different things. He can, for example, record a magic in his brain, even if he has only seen or heard it once, and then use Restoration to use it at any moment. However, since his memory is trash, he can only record it once, and the usage time is limited to a maximum of 30 seconds. And as if that were not enough, since his body is also in insufficient condition, he can restore only things that have a material form. An extremely overpowered skill, but limited by the loser user. An important point as well is that once he used the recorded magic, he will not be able to use it again. And the power of the magic depends completely on his brain and body. And after throwing all that information at Alan, the goddess leaves without providing any help for his problem. And returning to the present, Alan explains how he produced that magic to Sylphie, and she only asks why it had to be that specific one to spoil the materials in the jar. However, he says that he did not spoil it, but rather fermented it, and that this is an essential process for the creation of bread. With that, the three girls once again become confused about what fermentation would be, and Alan, for knowing something that they do not know, takes full advantage of that moment. A moment that he himself ruins, as he then proceeds to explain how the entire fermentation process works. The girls recognize his knowledge and become impressed. For a moment he felt that he truly was a reincarnated person with unique benefit, that they would not be able to replicate this time. However, that did not last long, because only a few minutes later, the three of them were using the same magic he used for fermentation, which left him completely confused. It was not enough that they were capable of using forest magic, wind, and metal manipulation, they could also use dark magic. The magic that he had been keeping all this time was simply reproduced after seconds of explanation. Taking advantage of the moment, the goddess appears just to provoke him, calling him cute and naive, which makes Alan say that he will bother her all night asking for an upgrade, but she only asks if then he will not let her sleep the entire night, and that she is looking forward to that. Seeing that she has 100% attack and defense, he even tries to get angry, but with that beautiful smile of hers, he simply cannot. And as a final blow, she says that she loves it when he gets like that, and quickly leaves for her dimension, leaving Alan and us with that beautiful image of her smiling, provoking our feelings. After that, the girls continue with the recipe and skillfully prepare the bread. When tasting it, it seemed like completely different food and not the bread they had known until then. Looking at the girls being so happy at that moment makes him remember that before reincarnating, he did not have room to make anyone happy besides his sister Mizuki. And that making other people smile like that makes him quite happy. However, things would be even better if he had already achieved his goal of leaving the Club of Virgins. Suddenly the other girls begin to appear because the smell in the kitchen was good, and Alan decides to teach everyone the recipe so they can hold a bread festival. Now, from Sylphie's point of view, we see that everyone was happy with the festival, and the girls who once had closed hearts now open up normally under Alan's influence. He did not need to order them or try to coerce them in any way. His charm and hard work simply enchanted them. Today he came with the creation of bread and fries, and she is sure that the moment they expand their products, it will generate an explosive increase in sales. And there is still the whole process to reach that. Yeast and fermentation. Sylphie wonders how much Alan must have studied to arrive at that. Thinking about that makes her remember the time she questioned whether he could not read scrolls, and it makes her feel embarrassed. Little does she know that she had always been right and that Alan is illiterate and a beta. She then reaffirms to herself once again that she cannot hesitate and needs to show results that can exceed his expectations. Now, from Aura's point of view, we see that she truly loved the bread and was still eating until now. She still remembers when she heard about Alan's objective of ending world hunger and thought it was madness, but now she saw that he has the knowledge for that and is excited for his achievements. She is from a proud race, and she is only receiving things without giving anything in return, and she will not let it remain like that. She intends to give everything she has to support him, but before that she will eat a few more breads. Now, from Noelle's point of view, while eating her delicious bread, she could not stop thinking about how cool Alan was. Normally he keeps his knowledge to himself, but this time Alan thought about everyone. And the reason for that for her is very simple. He just wanted everyone to eat delicious food. In addition, these days Noelle has been feeling strange. Her heart begins to beat faster whenever she sees Alan's smile. All this time she has received everything from him, but she is not as intelligent as Sylphie. But even so, she wants to be more useful. She wants to make him proud of her and see him smile more. Now, more than ever, she feels that she wants to create these things. That way she will finally receive head pats again. All the girls were having this kind of thought that night, wanting to be useful to Alan. But someone simply kidnapped him that night. And with that, we'll stop here. If you enjoyed this recap and want more parts of it, or more recaps in general, leave a like, a comment, and if possible, subscribe to the channel. See you next time.